My name's Gary Hockin. I'm a web developer from Swansea in the UK. And this talk has a mouse pointer in the middle. This talk is more of a story than a technical talk. It's a tale of how a small company based in Swansea managed to acquire a license to produce a game on Facebook for The Lord of the Rings, one of the biggest licenses in the world. So, first of all, how many people here use Facebook? Embarrassing, yeah? And how many people play what Facebook loosely term as games on Facebook? Anyone? You don't have to be embarrassed, it's fine. Come on, more than that, surely. How many people get really annoyed with their friends sending them a million requests to become pirates or to become Jedis or whatever? Yes. So, I guess everyone's aware that Facebook has the concept of games, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Great. Turn it on helps. So yeah, this is me, Gary Hockin. I'm at GH on Twitter. I used to be Spabby on IRC, but now I've unified one nick to rule them all. So at GH and GH on IRC. And that's the last time I'll be using any of this nonsense, whom art thou speak. Don't worry, that won't be going through the presentation. So unfortunately, I do have to provide a disclaimer and read out that tiny text in the bottom. The One Ring, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, the names of the characters, the events, the items, the places they're in, are all trademark of Souls Ents Company, DAB, Middle-earth Enterprises. This is a not-for-profit talk. Out of the way so I don't get lawyers on my back. So the interview. I was working for another small developer in Cardiff when I saw a job posting for a PHP games developer. So that's kind of interesting for me. I'm a big games player. I play a lot of video games. I play some real-life card and board games. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I attended the interview in August 2009, and the interview went fairly well, I guess except for one point when they asked me, have you ever read the Lord of the Rings books or seen the films? So my answer was, I think, yeah, it was, I'm certainly aware of the stories. So I kind of got out of that one a little bit, I guess. But they surprisingly offered me the job as a web developer at a company called Microcosm Games. Microcosm Games produced a play-by-mail game based on a license from The Lord of the Rings. So does anyone know or has heard of play-by-mail? It's kind of old-fashioned now, I guess. There's some hardcore game geeks in the audience, so I'm sure some of them will have heard of it. But they'd managed to get a license for play-by-mail simply because it wasn't an area where The Lord of the Rings license would expect to have any competition for that license. You know, would there be anyone else in the world interested in running that particular turn-based version of the Lord of the Rings license? You know, no. So it's effectively free money for the Tolkien estate. The game, the license they had was based on the books of J.R. Tolkien, not the films. You know, that's owned by a completely different set of companies. And the game had been, you know, largely successful. A small niche audience who didn't mind paying a lot of money to play the game. So they'd approached Souls Ents again and asked, would you be willing for us to transfer our play-by-mail game into a website-based game? And surprisingly, they said, that's fine. As long as you stick to the proviso that it's a turn-based game, you can do that on the web. So before I joined the team, they decided to go down the route of a Flash-based game. Initially, they were hoping to use mobile phones as the devices, so it wasn't a Flash-based game. But the game had superb gameplay for a hardcore gamer. If you were a traditional gamer and you understood complex game mechanics, there was a lot to do and a lot of decisions to be made. So this was the original game. I mean, not particularly elegant to look at, but as I said, very good gameplay. You use the carousels on the right-hand side to select your orders. You can basically move around the map, which we'll see soon, and then you submit your orders to the server. The server effectively queues the orders. There was a Java-based game engine which processed the orders and returned them back to the browser. There was a map, the full world of Middle-earth. If anyone's into those kind of things, you may recognize that kind of the map. And then you had combat. So each area had some baddies in there. I think that's the Balrog, if anyone knows these things. I don't know. It's not my area. But you'd fight. These would be your results. You had to defeat the monsters that were in the square you were moving into to be able to move into there. Technically, I mentioned the Java game engine. Yeah. As a PHP developer, that wasn't my concern. That was fine. HTML and FBML front end. FBML was Facebook's early attempt to enable application developers to easily write apps. Basically, Facebook proxied every single request and replaced some tokens with things like the person's name, their unique ID. It was written in completely top-down PHP, require once header.php, do your stuff, require once footer.php. The underlying engine behind this was really terrible, which I guess is why they tried to employ PHP extraordinaire, myself. So at the time, there were a number of games on Facebook. So sorry, this game failed abysmally. Let's just make that perfectly clear. The whole game, far too complex for the Facebook audience. Really, really failed on every conceivable level. Does anyone who put their hand up to say they played Facebook games? Somebody did. Do you recognize this kind of game? So this is Mafia Wars. This is one of the most successful Facebook games, and when I use the term Facebook games, please note game is used always in air quotes. I'm not going to do it every time, but it really is. This is Mafia Wars. So effectively, all you do is you click these buttons down the side until your energy runs out, and then you go and have a cup of coffee and come back in half an hour and do the whole process again. And that's a game. This was, at the time, in 2009, this was by far the most successful game on Facebook in terms of user numbers, in terms of monetization, people actually spending real money on this. 12 million idiots played this game each and every month. 12 million people would log on at least once a month to play that game. Out of that, they had a monetization rate of around 10%. So 10% of those 12 million would spend money every month on that game. And as I say, game again, yeah. So we have this license. We have this amazing license that somehow managed to stumble into our laps. We have a game that's failing because effectively it's too complicated and too enjoyable by all accounts. So it was plain that our game was too much like a real game to attract massive numbers on Facebook. The games were very, very simple. That is kind of typical of the games of the time. It was kind of early in Facebook's game anatomy, for want of a better word. It was very, very early in the progression of how games were working on Facebook. They were largely following how games developed in real life. So, early games on the early platforms were a hell of a lot simpler than the games that you play on consoles and PC today. So we decided, let's take a look at the games that have millions and millions of users every month. And let's see, what do they do? What do they do that we don't? What do they do to make them successful? So they were stupidly simple, and they really were stupidly simple. Basically, a huge percentage of people who were playing Facebook games were playing games for the first time. So that's a really, really key consideration, that these people had never played games before. So you absolutely could not make any assumptions that they were aware of any mechanics that you see in any other video games or board games. They use short, repeatable sessions. So the games would really try and get you into a habit of playing them around your daily life. So 20 minutes with your breakfast instead of reading the newspaper or watching the news. 20 minutes at lunchtime, or, if you're web developers, 20 minutes during your working day, because nobody's going to know. And then 20 minutes at tea time and 20 minutes before you go to bed. You get the picture. The whole idea of these games were to try and get people into the habit of revisiting. And they were playable for free, but they upsold you well to try and get you to spend money. And the last point we've covered, they make you spam your friends. They try and grow virally, as they call it. They try and grow by not having to spend money on advertising. So, you know, Bob needs some more fertilizer to help you on his Farmville farm. Please come and help him. I mean, as we say, we've all seen those in our Facebook inbox, and we all largely immediately block them. So they do work, otherwise people wouldn't use them. So this was kind of our remit at this point. Rewrite the One Ring to make it more like Mafia Wars. Yeah, I get a shudder just saying it now, and I really do, but that was what we decided to do. If Mafia Wars can get 12 million users every month with no branding and built from scratch, why can't we get 10% of that with a well-known international brand? So, codename in-house, Mafia Tours. Tor, the One Ring, you get it, it's fine. How hard could it be? That's the question. How hard could it be? So we had a ton of assets. We had original soundtracks written by a great guy called Ryan Davis. I highly recommend him if you ever need any original soundtrack work. We had tons of art, largely not very good art, but we had it. You can only imagine how much art we needed to represent every location, every character, you know, every known plot twist in The Lord of the Rings. You can imagine we had tens of thousands of pieces of original artwork. You know, let's not go there and do all that again. So let's try and use as much as we can to try and take the game that we've already got and make it more like Mafia Wars. Does anyone recognize that logo? Zynga, yeah, that's Zynga. So in 2009, they were estimated to have 200 million unique gameplay sessions every month. So that's not 200 million users, that's 200 million unique gameplay sessions. So they largely had the same user base that would use 3 or 4 of their games, so when their energy was recharging in Mafia Wars, people would just go and play Pirate Wars. Exactly the same game, different phrases, yar, you know, that kind of thing. They were immensely successful in 2009. I mean, at some points, they basically had a license to print money. For every $10 they spent on Facebook advertising, they were making $11. That doesn't sound amazingly impressive when I throw it out here in front of everyone. But when I tell you that they had 200 million sessions and estimated 50 to 60 million unique users, they were making millions of dollars a month by effectively spending that $10 every time and pulling in the extra $1 on a massive scale. So our thoughts were, let's try and learn from Zynga as much as possible. Or let's just copy what Zynga do and hope that it works for us, realistically. So we came up with a prototype. Yeah, prepare your eyes, please. This is not the finest moment. Are there any UI designers in the house or anyone who does front-end work? Probably best if you look away now. Whoa, see, even the slides doesn't want to show it. Yeah, this was our idea. This was a live prototype, an alpha, whatever you want to call it. It worked. So it was based on Zen Framework 1, my framework of choice at the time, and it's based on jQuery, and it's just your traditional AJAX, asynchronous requests, process, send the results back. But something to notice is that the game is an absolute ton simpler. The number of stats we had in the original game that I showed you was around 30. So 30 different metrics to gauge how your player is stacking up. I can't be bothered to count them, but there ain't 30. We had a very elegant back end in Zen Framework 1 that allowed us to quickly add content and to quickly be able to create conditions based on these stats. And those conditions could be used to say, well, to do this quest, you need to be level 2 and you need 6 of whatever that stat is and 6 of that and 2 of that. So we could also reward people using the same condition system. So there was a very, very good platform behind this terrible UI. But it worked, as I say, it worked. So there's something to be said for that. This is what I was fighting at the time from our technical director. The code should dictate the GUI design and not the other way around. I'll let you to discuss that amongst yourselves. But that was absolutely the way we were working at the time. So what did we learn from this? Well, yeah, the game looked shit. It was terrible. But it included some good things, and it did show us that we had the technical knowledge and the platform that we could run this game. So what did we include in this game that we'd learned from Zynga, copied from Zynga? Always make the player do something for you in the first session. So you get a request from me because I'm such a good Facebook friend that I love to spam you all with my gameplay and requests. The chances of you making it past the first session are fairly slim. The chances of you coming back after playing the game once, however good the game looks, I mean, yeah, not that, but so you really need to try and make the user do something for you in the first session. This was what we decided. So the things that we try to make you do, try and make people spam their friends as early as possible. So that even if you don't come back, there's a chance you'll get 3 other people to come and play the game. Yeah, sorry. Some people will be hating me, thinking, you're everything I hate about Facebook, but yes. And users should be encouraged as highly as possible to come back for a second, third, and consequent sessions, to try and get into that routine, to try and get them into the habit of playing the game. So, try and set some task that is only completable when they come back in 3 hours or 20 minutes, or, try and encourage them to return. We kind of looked through nearly all of the Zynga games and tried to figure out what they were doing to be so successful, and that was not the best fortnight of my life. Playing these games, I ran farms, yeah, brilliant, pirate ships, yes, mafia mobs. But we kind of figured every one of their games do these things, so yeah, let's do them. Having more friends playing the game should give you tangible in-game benefits. Obviously not tangible, that's completely the wrong word. You can't pick it up, but you should have in-game benefits if your friends play the game. So even if I ask my friends, could you just install this game even if you don't play it, because I get a benefit for the more friends I play the game? Now that sounds like it's not going to be very valuable to the company. So you've got people who install the app, and I don't know, to install the app, you basically give the app the permissions to read your data. So why is that beneficial to the company? Well, it's because if they install the app, we can send them requests. And if they install the app, they're boosting our numbers. Instead of people who are looking at installing the app seeing this game has 10,000 monthly users, they may see 30,000 monthly users. And that makes a big difference in the number of people who you get turned away from the allow rate. So we introduced some mechanics where you have a fellowship who follow you around our new game. And the more fellowship you had slightly more power. And that really worked well. And barriers. The whole concept of these games are that they are a grind game, as we call them. You turn up, you press the buttons, and then you go away. But you have to put barriers in front of the players to make sure that they do something to make your app profitable, either in growth or in spending money. So a typical example is you've come to a locked door and you need 3 golden keys to get through. How are you going to get those golden keys? Well, you can either give us £1 or $1 or €1, and you can go straight through because these keys can be bought somewhere for real money. Or you can get 3 of your friends to help you. So if 3 of your friends click on this little post on your stream, then each of them will give you a golden key and you can progress through the game. And that's really fundamentally key to how these games make money. Basically, our motto was if somebody hadn't spammed their friends and hadn't spent any real money by around about 2 real-time hours of gameplay, then they were dead to us. What value are they to us? They're basically sucking our bandwidth. You know, these people could conceivably play through the entire content, 290 hours of content, without spending any money and without spamming their friends. They can do it, but we really don't want them to. You know, where's the benefit to us? It's a free game, sure, but you can spend money to get through the content quicker. So the mechanics, I guess, we've discussed a lot of that already, but the games all have an illusion of choice. So you think that you can do anything you want and go anywhere you want, but really you can't. You can certainly click on different buttons, and certainly that will spend more health or energy and give you more experience and get you up through the levels of the game quicker. But is that really a choice? Of course it's not. It's just you're forced through the path. Your only choice really dictates how quickly you play through that path. And again, turn the game into a habit or a ritual. I can't stress that enough. That's kind of absolutely fundamental. So as an aside, at this point I was writing a ton of PHP and JavaScript to interact with Facebook, as you can imagine. The Graph API, which at the time was the world's least documented API. Yeah, that was my bitch. That was what I kind of spent my whole waking day wrestling with. But the JavaScript API as well. So, like any good web developer does, and I'm sure everyone in this room would have done the same thing, we wrote it to be reusable. So if we bring out new products in the future, new games in the future, we can skin this game and, you know, make it pirates or whatever we want to, then we want to be able to reuse this code. So I kind of came up with the idea of, well, this is nearly a game in itself. It has no content, but there's kind of the makings of a game here. So, introducing, push the button. This is one of my proudest moments as a web developer, genuinely. So this is a game. This is absolutely a game. And what does this game do? Well, you post this button on your Facebook timeline, and you get points for however many people click it. That's the game. If you want to play the game, it still exists. Go and play it now. It's great. Genuinely, we released this. We shoehorned in some achievements, so the more buttons that you clicked or had clicked, you had joking achievements. Yeah, great. There was an element of chance. So when you posted a button, you can get a gold button that gives you a ×5 multiplier, or you can get a silver one or a bronze one, or the plain red one that's ×1. So, you know, there was a little bit of game element in it, but not much. We spent no money promoting this game. 10 of us, when we launched this game, 5 employees of the company and 5 friends, just started posting buttons one day. Within 3 months, there were 3,000 people playing this game, believe it or not. And within 6 months, it had an immense cult following. There were about 200 to 300 people who would religiously scour Facebook looking for these buttons to click them. I don't know if that makes me a genius or it just makes those people have very empty lives, but it happened. One guy ran a blog where he posted links to these buttons wherever he found them so other people could click them. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I left the company and the game is still running and there are still 500 people who play this game every month. No promotion, no updates, the game has just been running. I'm quite proud of it. in a weird way, yeah. So monetization. The game's no good if you can't make money. What's the point? It's fair to say that when we launched the original Flash version of the game, the monetization was kind of crowbarred in at a later date. We've written the game, how can we make money from this game? And that really doesn't work. If you're interested in doing something like this yourself, you really need to be thinking about how this game will make money before you do anything else. It should literally be the first, second, and third things on your list. We use premium credits to sell the more famous characters in the Lord of the Rings game. I'm not, unfortunately, allowed to show you the shop page with these characters on because I quite like my house and my car, and I don't want Mr. Tolkien's lawyers coming after me. But we would sell characters from the book, you know, the more famous ones, Frodo, whatever, for real money, using Facebook credits, which is a currency that Facebook use for you to sell in-game or in-app purchases without worrying about local currency. There's a premium currency, so you have two currencies in the game. Here I'm doing really well. I've got 99 million gold and I've got 99,909 favors, which is the premium currency. So the gold is just what you accrue in the game. That's fine, that's great, but the premium currency is what you spend to get in-game advantages, and that's key. So somebody's having a really good time, they've run out of energy, they can't play the game anymore. Well, just spend one of your premium currency and we'll refill it for you. Carry on going. A really good driver was player versus player and the social aspects of the game. So players could fight against each other in skirmishes, and if you spent $5 or €5, then you're going to win every single PvP battle. And some people really like that, you know, each to their own. And there's other social aspects where you can see how you stack up against your fellow players, your friends if they're playing. I mean, they probably wouldn't be, but you can see how you stack up. So we have things like the raids, where a group of 10 players come together to take down a really big monster. And you can see what damage the other people are doing in that raid, and they should be of similar level to you in the game. And everyone's doing 100 damage a hit, and some guy's doing 1,000 damage a hit. Why is he doing that? Oh, right, he bought that. I'm going to buy that. I want to do 1,000 damage. You can see at this point that the GUI has improved slightly, thankfully. And you don't necessarily have to get people to spend their own money to put dollars in your own pocket. This is another app we launched at the time, which is designed to help people to collect all those gifts that they see in their stream. So basically, it just does a graph get of your stream, filters out the games so they all appear together, and then uses JavaScript to pretend to click them. So Facebook didn't like this app very much. I think it's called botting, but that's fine. So we had the concept where you could only do this a few times a day, and if you wanted to use it constantly, then you had to become a premium member and give us some money. But one of the ways you could become a premium member is to watch a video. So this is a 3-minute video given to us by Supersonic Ads. If somebody plays to end, we would make about $2 from Supersonic for somebody playing that YouTube video to the end. So that's great, because people are more than happy to press play, go and make a cup of tea, come back, and then click next, and then have their premium membership. And we don't care if they go and make a cup of tea. As long as that video plays to end, we make our money. So that's a really, really good tool. We did use that in the One Ring to give people refills or short time boosts, and that worked really, really well. I mean, pricing's not really important. If anyone's interested, you know, there's a couple of really good techniques where you have a middle-of-the-road, mid-priced purchase that you really want people to buy. So you do a cheaper purchase, which is hideously underpowered, and you do a more expensive purchase that is also hideously underpowered and very much overpriced. And people will then try and buy the middle one because they're like, well, that's plainly the best, and it really does work. These simple tips, you know, they really do help you to to turn a 99 pence spend into a 1.99 spend. They really do help. Unbelievably, when we priced like that, hundreds of people bought the most expensive item. Hundreds of people bought an item that was only there to try and drive them to buy the cheaper item. That's a fact. It happened multiple times, to the point where we were actually putting in $50 items just to see what would happen. Has anyone read the Lord of the Rings books here? Okay, so somebody can help me out. Early in the story, there's a character. Let me see if he's on the slide. No. Early in the story, there's a character who in the books is immensely powerful, but doesn't appear in the films, basically. Tom Bombadil, thank you very much, yes. As you can see, I really did get a lot out of working on Lord of the Rings. Tom Bombadil, so it doesn't appear in the films, so not known to those people who were playing the game because they've enjoyed the movies. But, yeah, you know, I did read the books later on, by the way, just to clarify, so kind of a powerful character in the book. So we hadn't used him, we stuck him in for $50. Fairly decent, nothing really special. And people bought him. So this is my rule number one. This is really what I used to repeat to myself several times a day when thinking, this will never work, nobody will go for that, nobody will buy that. People are morons. I guess I should change that to Facebook gamers are morons, but I think that's more succinct. So people are morons. They would buy anything. So things were going well. We spending some marketing money. We climbed up to around 50,000 Facebook users a month. The app was monetizing incredibly well, better than our original projections. People really did want to buy these characters that they knew and loved and were in, common knowledge, common parlance. So we were very lucky. People were buying stuff. But we started to have some problems. One day we came into work with no monitoring on this app, by the way, so that's one thing I wouldn't recommend. But we came into work and nothing was working. The game was just slow or timing out. So what's going on? Why, nothing's changed. Our servers are looking healthy, high load average, lots of Apache processes stalled. What's going on? Facebook's API was under maintenance. So when your Apache, or Nginx, I guess, I wouldn't know, but when your Apache worker tries to do a HTTP request to an external API, it waits for the response from that API before being able to proceed and finish the response. So when Facebook's API started responding slowly, our servers could literally not cope with the traffic that we were generating anymore. Yeah, that wasn't a pleasant day. And I suddenly realized we are absolutely, incredibly in bed with Facebook here. Our entire future of this business relies on Facebook not changing anything, keeping us being able to do what we are doing successfully, and their API being always up. It's kind of a scary realization when you realize you are that far in bed with a third party that they could kill you any minute. So yeah, relying on a shit third party, not so good. Every single thing that we put onto our game had to be pre-cleared by Tolkien's estate. So any changes to text, any changes to art, any changes to GUI, any new content, any content removed, everything had to be put onto a DVD, believe it or not, mailed in the post to Tolkien's lawyers, sit around, and then a mail back 3 months later saying, yes, you can do that. Or no, can you change that? And the entire 3-month cycle works again. At this point in time, this would have been kind of around mid to late 2010. There was a lot of people who'd had the same idea we did, and there were a lot of games on Facebook competing for the eyes that we were competing for. And they were doing really cool things. They were introducing one-day-only quests that happened on Valentine's Day. They were introducing 2 weeks of bonus experience over Christmas. We couldn't do anything. We could not do any of that. If we were going to do something for Christmas, we had to think about it the January before. It was really becoming a struggle for us to release new content fast enough for the top-end players to have something to do continually. Now, those top-end players had invested the most time, effort, and emotion into playing the game and were more likely to spend by a considerable margin. So if they were dropping off, we were really struggling with our monetization. People started expecting more, so games started to come out that were real games. Games like Bejeweled, where you flip some jewels to try and make lines of 3. That's a real game. That's a game mechanic that's been going around on handheld devices, on PC, on consoles forever. That's a proper game. Mafia Wars came out as Mafia Wars 2. It's the same game engine, but instead of you just clicking buttons, it was a flash interface where you walked around a map to get to the buttons you wanted to click. Now, that doesn't sound like a huge improvement, but it was. People were starting to understand more about real game mechanics, and our amazing front end really looked even more dated than it did when we launched it. I was shocked, given my rule 1, which was my rule of thumb for over 6 months, started to be proven wrong. People did start expecting more, and they did start wanting more than just a database with some buttons to press on the front. There were also some real games coming from third-party developers. So Zynga had come from nowhere. They built up their business entirely on social games, as we call them. You know, big brands from outside of Zynga and outside of Facebook had never been interested in Facebook. But you started seeing games like The Sims Online. You know, a real game that had done incredibly successfully on multiple platforms now is available as a social game on Facebook. And we were trying to compete with that. So yeah, things started to slide out of our favor slightly. And we had some technical problems due to growth. We were hitting our MySQL database every time we wanted to look up the stats of an item. Those stats never change. So suddenly, we became a product of our own success, but with an incredibly low budget to solve that problem. I hear a lot of people say, oh, yeah, it'll be fine. If we ever have technical problems because of performance, it's a product of success. We can spend money to solve that problem. We can get more servers. We can get bigger servers. So we did some serious work improving Zen Framework 1's performance, thanks largely to a tutorial by Rob Allen in the front here. And we started using memcache to cache dictionary items, kind of standard solutions to these problems. But we still had real problems. We were using Storm On Demand, which was hosting the app in my butt, in the cloud, sorry. And we really just couldn't afford to scale these servers anymore. We had real problems. And then SoulZent started taking even longer to return our content clearing. They started not answering our phone calls. We'd written a whole load of content based on the fact that in 12 months' time or 18 months' time, Warner Brothers were releasing a film based on the books of The Hobbit. And we had access to those books. We had the license for The Hobbit, so we thought, right, we're going to be clever this time. We'll do the prep work 18 months in advance, and then we'll piggyback The Hobbit's obvious promotion. They started not returning our calls, not replying to our emails. Yeah, it was getting a bit fishy, for want of a better word. And then we came in one day and the whole app was switched off. The entire app was switched off. So Warner Brothers had issued a cease and desist to Facebook saying they own the license to The Lord of the Rings, and why are you letting these people use our rights, our intellectual property? And Facebook hadn't bothered to check with us, they just switched us off. Because Warner Brothers are a huge international company, and we aren't. So they just turned us off. Great. So now we have 50,000 angry players getting really annoyed because they can't get to the habit that we religiously tried to form in them. It wasn't a good day either. There was no communication. We faxed off our contracts, we faxed off our proof that we can be doing this. And Facebook did turn us back on after 24 hours, but you know, that really did hit us hard. But it was strange that Warner Brothers were suddenly taking an interest in this small game that would in no way be impacting upon their business. And then the management started going quiet. So we'd needed to renew our license, which had been a rubber stamp process every single year that we'd done it. Every single year that we did it, we filled the form in, we sent it off, we paid the inordinate fee that the lawyers wanted to clear it, and then they sent us back our license. And it was around September time, and the license had been sent off. And normally we had a staff meeting to say, just to let everyone know, the license has been renewed, and we can continue playing. And we hadn't had that. It was all slightly odd. And then boom. We get the knowledge that the Warner Brothers are now having the license from us because they want to do their own Facebook game. So what can we do about that? Well, apparently, I was told on a Monday morning via a Skype conference call with the directors of the company, the solution to that is to immediately lay off all development staff and stop production of the company. So yeah, that was a pretty cool way to be told you're effectively fired, but the Warner Brothers had been given a license for the book. And to be fair, they're going to make a lot more money for Tolkien's estate. You know, we do a profit share with them. We were turning over, you know, a fairly decent amount of money for the estate, but the Warner Brothers could give them millions of pounds with this license. So you can't really blame them, but it was quite worrying. So what did the company do next? Well, we had a month's notice to work, and you can imagine that was one of my most productive working months ever. Yeah. They decided they wanted to keep running the game. The game had been successful in as much as it made money, and that's the best success metric of anything. So the game had been successful and was continuing to be successful. So they decided to take this. So this is the raid screen I was talking about earlier, where a group of people who would be here if there were more people are attacking this large ring wraith, whatever. And they turned it into this. So does anyone recognize that man's name? That's Robin Hood, yeah. So Robin Hood has no license. Robin Hood has no intellectual property around it. So they decided to use things that don't have licenses. They called it the Mythic Isles. I found it incredibly confusing. The map went from this, so the Shire, Rivendell, you know, the Barrow Downs, Moria, all things you would know from the films and the books, all good locations, and they turned it into this. So Sherwood Forest, Camelot, Black Forest, all things that have no intellectual property, but all very confusing. So the game still works. If anyone wants to take a look, which I wouldn't really advise, this is on camera. I would highly advise you to take a look if you were interested in looking at the game. Genuinely, good luck to Microcosm Games. They still run, you know, they still have products which maybe or maybe not make them money. And that is the story of how we completely failed to make any success at one of the largest licenses in the world.